So today our group is going to be talking about imposter syndrome, and we're going to be sharing our experiences about imposter syndrome in higher education. But before we begin, my name is Antoinette, and I'll be joined by Ada, Ernestina, and Stephanie. And our class talks about hierarchies of power and how we navigate those hierarchies. So before we begin, we're going to watch a video about America Ferrera and her words on imposter syndrome.
And I would say the quick, I don't give quick answers, the quick answer to do I have a fear of imposter syndrome is yes. But I've come to think of it very differently. Because what imposter syndrome says to us is that, you know, you walk into a space and what you feel is, I don't belong here. Everybody else belongs here and I don't belong here. And I've come to think of the titling of it as imposter syndrome as like victim shaming, where I'm like, and now I'm giving myself like a disease that I have because, you know, not only do I not belong here, but like I don't even feel like I belong here, so I'm doing this the wrong way. And you just shrink yourself. You get smaller and smaller and smaller. And I don't really have the replacements. Maybe one of you can think of what the replacement word is for imposter syndrome. But I think the difference of the way I look at it is like, oh, it's not my fault that I feel like I don't belong in this space. Everything for my whole life has told me I don't belong in this space. Wow. So it's not really imposter syndrome, it's appropriate reaction to what I've been told my whole life. And whatever syndrome, whatever that is. And because one makes me feel more shameful. One makes me feel like, shit, I don't know what I'm doing, and I feel really small around these geniuses, and no one knows it, and they're gonna find out, and they're gonna kick me out. Instead of all these smart people think I belong here, and I've worked really hard, and I am here, and I've done the work. Why do I still feel like I don't belong here? Because I believe what I've been told and taught my whole life, that I don't belong here. So I just think we have to, like, for our own selves, start thinking about it differently. Of like, I feel strange in this space because I am a stranger in this space. Because a lot of us are the first people like us to be in these spaces. And so, in a way, it's the most appropriate response you can have. We're just calling it the wrong thing.
I really like listening to it.
No, I agree. Like, there's something so powerful about hearing like imposter syndrome being framed in a way as like it's an appropriate reaction to the spaces that you're in. I don't know.
Right.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So many quotable lines from her speech. It really hit the nail on the head where it took the responsibility off of the person experiencing it and really put it into context with their environment. And I think those of us that have felt imposter syndrome or felt like they didn't belong, there's kind of this internalization. You feel that it's because of something you did or what you didn't do. And so it's great that she kind of, I don't want to say exposes, but kind of brings to light something that those of us who have experienced imposter syndrome know that we feel it so much that we internalize it and we get it from our environment. It's not something that we just come up with on our own.
Yeah. I like going off your point. I like that it's like the whole wording, it's sort of like a form of victim shaming that she mentions. And when she mentioned that, it feels like this weight was like uplifted. Like there's no reason for us to feel like we don't belong because it was all about how we grew up and everything that was placed on us.
Right.
No, I agree. I think it's like when she said that it's a way of like victim blaming, like that really sat with me because I have been in so many like spaces like in education and even outside of that where I have like a lot of I should statements, like I should already know how to do this. I should already know X, Y, and Z resources to help me. But in reality, it's like my parents never went to school. Like the farthest my parents ever went was 3rd grade. So the fact that I'm like, I should know this, like sometimes I'm like, I have to give myself the space to breathe, but I don't because I'm like, I should know this already. So
Same.
yeah.
Like saying, like with my parents, they didn't go past like third grade or second grade. So it's like it's that always that pressure of like you're supposed to know this, especially like growing up. It's the idea that because we speak English, we're supposed to know all of this. From like, no, this is new to me. So I'm
Right.
still, yeah.
Yeah, it's one of those things where higher education has been so like gate kept for decades. And now that we have all this diversity and all these demographics attending higher education, it's like you're kind of ushered in with everyone, and you're, standing shoulder to shoulder with kids who maybe come from upper middle class backgrounds, whose parents went to college, who already have such advantages and a leg up. And you yourself feel inadequate, even though it's not anything you did or didn't do. It's just really simply where and when you were born. And then on one hand, you also feel guilty because as a first generation college student, you have the opportunity to go to college. You have opportunities that your parents and your grandparents and family before you didn't have. So for me, I get tripped up over, well, I'm supposed to be able to do this. Like, I have the opportunity to learn how to do this. Why don't I know how to do this? Oh my gosh, I'm so far behind. And then you kind of start to spiral, but then also pick yourself up. And that's kind of why America Ferrera's speech was so helpful because it really puts it into context. It takes away your responsibility. Well, not your responsibility, but it takes away the blame from you. So that the whole victim shaming aspect really stood out.
Yeah, and also it makes me think about like what higher education institutions are doing for their students. Like, like how are they living up to their own missions and like purposes? Like, are they fulfilling what they need? And like how's this like conversation between like equality versus equity? Because I think a lot of institutions are like, we treat everybody the same, which, I feel like that's something that we've been told to a lot, but also, now that we're recognizing that institutions are becoming more diverse, how do we meet those students' needs? Right?
Right. It's such a weird concept because imposter syndrome stems from so many different things. And not every strategy will work for each student. So for example, if a student feels behind when it comes to technology or any sort of training, we can provide that for students or provide resources for them to access that training that will hopefully help them. Or if it's writing papers, if they're not accustomed to using APA or MLA and their classes are giving them limited assistance, we can refer them to the writing center. So really getting at the root of why they feel that they don't belong will go a long way in helping them feel as though they belong. Because, hey, at the end of the day, they got into the university and they do belong to be there, whether they realize it or not.
Yeah, I just, oh, sorry, go.
No, I was just gonna say like I like agree on like all the points, but like I always like do wonder, it's like, oh, what happens if we like treat like, getting into like bigger universities or being able to like accomplish all these things as not something as grand and big as it's not like to say like, oh, like, what you achieved isn't like well enough. But like I do wonder if you like kind of picture it differently instead of it being like, oh, this is something that you've achieved. Like what happens if you like reframed it in like a way where it's like, hey, you did this, but like this is also like a good accomplishment for you to grow as yourself rather than like this big like thing that you've taken on and like, you know, it's like this new thing essentially. So I wonder if like we can like reframe like kind of like that mindset to see if we can like reduce like that imposter syndrome that way.
I think I understand the idea, like how instead of making it be like this huge accomplishment or like, oh my God, you did something, it was like, I don't want to say we didn't think you were gonna do, but something that was just difficult, and just have it said like, oh, this is another milestone that's gonna help you towards what you're gonna accomplish. Instead of, yeah, so in order to reduce. Yeah.
Yeah, or even, sorry, that's a little loud, but even if it's just like, because I like the reframing bit, even like changing imposter syndrome to something a little bit more empowering, or just being like, I'm grateful I got into this school, but also, and it was hard for me, but also this school should be grateful to even have me. You know, not giving so much power to the institution or the individual, but also being like, my skill set has led me here. So of course I got in, of course they should be lucky to have me. But I know sometimes that reframing can be a little hard, because how do we reframe it so that the student does believe it, you know?
Exactly. I know in this class we've spoken about cultural capital before, and reminding students that all the skills that they've gained, if they're first generation, if their parents speak a different language, etc., and how the skills that they learn, advocating for their families, doing taxes, um, learning how to take care of their house and maybe their younger siblings, all that is cultural capital and lessons that have shaped who they are and gotten them to where they are. So really reinforcing the skills that they gain, even if it's not from a classroom, or not really comparing themselves to the opportunities that their other peers may have had.
Yeah, I think the way to like reframe what social capital we do have, because I always think about, when I think about my feeling of imposter syndrome, I think about how growing up, I don't know about you guys, I was the translator in my family. Like, even like being very small, I was like translating all these big documents, and I'm like, I don't know how to read it. I don't know what it means. But I think using that kind of experience and translate it into, you've had these skills like since you were little, and trying to have like a conversation, socialize with adults, and using all of these experiences that we did grow up having, and using it for our college experience. And it's like something that a lot of students and a lot of people don't realize is a valuable skill.
Yeah, no, I fully agree, because I was also the translator kid. Like, I remember 5, 6 years old, like my mom being like, can you translate what the doctor said to me? And I wouldn't know half the time it was happening, but you would invent your words on the spot. And so I remember that. And for the longest time, like, I was like, well, this isn't that impressive. Like, because it's almost like society dilutes that into being like, well, it's because your parents are immigrants, so of course you do it. Like, and not into like, this is such like such an important like part of your life now. Like, and this is giving you skills. So I think, so I appreciate you bringing that up, Ernestina, because I feel like it ties back to what like Stephanie was also saying about reframing things. So like, I'm not like just an immigrant kid, but also I have these skill sets because of my experience.
So, I don't know about you guys, but for me, I don't know, it's very like relevant, especially in Asian cultures. I don't know if it's like more relevant in your guys' culture, but like for me, growing up, it was always emphasized that like I had to like always do my best and like strive for like the top and stuff like that. So as I was like going through school and like, having like that mindset, like, oh, I always have to like, try for the best, like be number one and like get the best grades and stuff like that. I've noticed like the times where I like actually like struggled with like schoolwork and stuff like that. Like I realized like, oh hey, like there's like that expectations that like I'm not exactly meeting, but I like know like I don't always have to be meeting that expectations, but there's still like that like thing up there that like kind of like puts you back down. And it's like, hey, you know, because you grew up, you know, knowing these things, and now like because you're not meeting that, it's kind of like it puts you down as like a person. And I guess that's like where my imposter syndrome comes from. It's like, oh yeah, you know, like even though I did do what I was supposed to do, like it's just, did I do enough to like get there?
I like how we're all collectively nodding. It definitely hits home for a lot of us because, as you said, you know, we internalize so much of what the pressures that are put on us from our environment. And I definitely can relate to what you mentioned. I think that we ourselves can be our worst enemies when it comes to imposter syndrome because we we also put that pressure on ourselves. Because I think going in, especially as a first generation college student, you might feel you have a lot to prove, or you might need to prove your worth to be there. It's not enough to just get an acceptance. It's not enough to, you know, get the grades. It's you always feel like you need to be doing something or being one step ahead to even be considered. Um, and or to get, you know, a good referral from your professor or to get that internship. And so it's always like you're falling short when in reality you're not falling short. You're really trying your best, but it doesn't quite click. And that's partly due to the environment that we're in. It can be super competitive. And when we start to compare our lives to the lives of those around us, that's when it all compiles and it gives us even more pressure and even anxiety because we don't know where we're going to be in terms of the end of our school career. And we just want to make sure that we're keeping our head above water. So it's a lot to balance. It's a lot to juggle. But there is growth in that journey. Looking back at my undergrad, it really, I'm not saying it's good to be having pressure, but it's that motivation that really gave me the drive to achieve what I did. I just wish that I wasn't so hard on myself in the process.
Yeah. Antoinette, you like hit the nail on the head. I was thinking while you were speaking, I was thinking of one of my favorite quotes. I even have it written down like in a blackboard. Comparison is the thief of joy. And I always think of that because every time I would always compare myself to everyone around me. And I'm like, why am I so behind? I should be doing more. And that pressure is what really also adds to the imposter syndrome, especially when in our cohort, like a lot of our cohort mates are like younger, they came right out of undergrad, but I took some time off, so I that imposter syndrome, like I was feeling it so much when we first entered, but I had to learn not to compare myself with others, and just keeping that quote in my mind has always like helped me like give myself some time to breathe. Everyone is going at their own pace. Everyone has their own journey. And I really enjoyed how you put it.
I definitely echo you on seeing the demographics of our cohort. And being, I guess I would class myself as an older student. I don't know if that's the correct term for it, but yes, being older than a lot of our cohort members, it definitely kind of makes you feel, am I in the right place? Should I be doing this right now? Did I miss the bus? Um, but the fact that, you know, once we really delved into the program and we were able to share our experiences, and I hope you feel this way too, understand there was a place for us. And our experience really kind of anchored us in terms of our skills and our knowledge and what we had to contribute. So thank you for bringing that up.
I'm totally with you. I totally agree.
No, honestly, thank you, Ernestina and Antoinette, for sharing that experience with us. And I feel like that's so valid. And in a way, it's a little funny too, just because I feel like I am on the younger side of the cohort. And when I came in, I was like, oh my gosh, everybody has already all this like work experience, like they've lived through all of this. And like, there was like a good like amount of time last semester where I was like, I don't know if this is for me. Like, I don't know if I chose the right program. I don't know if this is the right group of people. So honestly, hearing that like we all go through it, like we're all having these thoughts and like we can all be so different, but we're still like, do I belong here? I think that means a lot and just talking about it and making it like more of a not so taboo topic, I think is like one of the first steps needed to even like overcome any imposter syndrome or anything.
Yeah, I think like Ada, I think like when we listen to everybody's stories, we all realize that we all feel the same. So there's like no reason for us to like give ourselves that much pressure because we're all feeling it.
So what would you all give to or give advice in this area to a current undergraduate student? What would you tell them if they came to you and said they were experiencing imposter syndrome, felt like they didn't belong or had anything to contribute?
Okay. So I don't know. I personally would say like, you know, there's a reason that like you made it into like whatever like school that you picked and chose to. And like even if like you yourself don't believe it, like your application or like if you had an interview or if there was something like else that played into like your admission process, like there was something that those people saw in you that got you to like where you are. And like you're also like the hard work that you put into even trying to apply for like these various different institutions and stuff like that. Like I just want to like reemphasize like, hey, you put the work in and like, your work had effort in it and it reflected on you and that's why you're here. And like yeah, it's scary and like it's understandable to like feel like all these like weird emotions when you start something new, but like it's okay. Like I think we're all in kind of like the same boats and stuff like that.
Yeah, going off what Steph said, like give yourself grace. Like this is a new journey for everyone. We're all starting like you're all starting the same program, but also try to connect with the cohort because really connecting and talking with each other made you realize that again, what I said, that you're not alone. Everybody's feeling the same way. So just connect with each other, find that support group, and just over time, you're gonna that feeling of imposterness is gonna slowly fade away because you're gonna get that experience. You're all gonna experience the same things together. So you realize that you're essentially on the same boat.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it depends student to student. But I don't know, I think I would very much like want to almost be a little bit reassuring, being like, you've done X, Y, and Z. You're meant to be here. Almost like as like being their cheerleader for a bit. Because I think what I've noticed, from personal experience and like from like the people around me, that sometimes we all need that little cheerleader, to be like, you're doing great. Like, I don't even need to look at your grades. You're doing great, and not that you have to lie to the student, but almost give them that unconditional love and support that they need for that moment. And then dive into, okay, what's the plan we need next? Um, so yeah, I think, yeah, just also being a part of their support system, but encourage them to look for more support out there.
I think you all brought up such important points. A support system, as Ada said, is very, very important to know that there's a community that supports them, that backs them up, that they can turn to when they need assistance. I think resources are very important, especially for those who experience imposter syndrome. If they feel like they're lacking in some way, college is a time for you to learn and build upon your skills. You don't need to know everything going into college. You're young adults, you're figuring it out. And so I think just reminding students that they don't need to be perfect, that they can also still have flaws. Many of them have shouldered responsibilities for their families and for people other than themselves. And so it might be really tough to hear. But to give them some respite and to have them understand that, they just going to college in and of itself is such a great accomplishment and a start of a great journey. And what I think of the quote, you stand on the shoulders of giants, you are here because of people that allow or made it possible for you to be here. And you yourself are now leaders in that journey. And so one day your children and grandchildren, the people that come after you, are going to look to you and say, they're here because of what you did. So understanding the powerful role that you play in that lineage, in that process is really, it's empowering. It might seem a little bit daunting to have all that on your shoulders, but at the same time, also just getting to revel in the fact that you did accomplish something great that future generations are going to look at you and admire you for and acknowledge you for. That's a really great feeling to have.
All right, so thank you all for listening to our podcast. I hope you enjoyed it and found this conversation very enlightening and something that you guys can take away with you and maybe share with others. But thank you.